Processes and procedures form the operational backbone of the vast majority of manufacturing enterprises. Streamlining those processes and making the procedures more efficient is the basis of the modern enterprise resource planning system, or ERP for short. ERP systems are designed to handle the back office functions in a manufacturing environment. Everything from inventory control to invoices and even human resources falls into the back office category. For manufacturers, Industry 4.0 meant having a digitized ERP that brought vast amounts of data together in a single location. The data would be available on demand by operational planning teams, production teams, and management. They access data, they coordinate it, analyze it, and ERP systems that use artificial intelligence can drive recommendations or make predictions as well. While back office operations depend on the data contained in ERPs, the front office does as well. Unfortunately, many companies have one technology platform for their ERP and a completely different CRM platform geared to their sales and service people. Rather than tearing down data silos, companies discover they've inadvertently created a big one, isolating their front office operations from that critical back office data. Hello, I'm Chris Henry, and welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve, the only podcast dealing with Salesforce solutions for the manufacturing industry. Ahead of the Curve is produced by Gerent, a leading Salesforce consultation and implementation provider. When sales and customer service teams cannot access data from an ERP, the entire company puts itself at a great disadvantage. Sales teams need to access historic customer data and production orders from ERPs so they can generate sensible and accurate sales forecasts for the planning teams. Integrating ERPs with CRMs has been tried before, and the results usually fall short of true integration. But one company, called Endowance, claims they have the Holy Grail, true ERP and Salesforce CRM integration. Their product is called Duet 360. In this episode, we'll hear from the CEO of Endowance, Rob Heenekamp, as well as one of Endowance's customers who's implemented Duet 360 with outstanding success. Let's begin with the genesis of Duet 360. Here's Endowance's CEO, Rob Heenekamp.
So we identified major process gaps in specific industries. Manufacturing and distribution and healthcare devices is some of our bigger industries. They account for about 80% of our business. And we identified it to be challenging, meaning there's processes that happen in the back office, there's processes in the front office, but the reality is they cannot be disconnected. And so what we did, we started building a product to actually make that more of an automated process. The challenge that the customers run into is those gaps, they were actually causing quite a bit of challenges, errors in orders, errors in reporting, so inefficient data, meaning hard to run businesses. So what happened, we started developing Duet 360, the one office product, in 2016. And literally within a week after we were ready, we had our first customer. So it came out that this product was exactly what's needed at the time that we started developing it. It's been growing fast ever since. So that is really what started it.
Very often, companies find that an ERP-CRM integration is balky, cumbersome, expensive, and at the end of the day, it just doesn't work. So has Endowance cracked the code with Duet 360?
Yes, we do think that. It may sound arrogant, if you will, but we think we do. And here's what's going on with that whole process. We have quite a bit of customers, and to get these projects going, it won't take us more than a couple of weeks to implement. The product has so many features included in it, that it is very easy for us to implement. In other words, the whole solution it consists of different components, but because of the simplicity of us implementing it and having all these features, it literally gives us the ability to do this in 3-4 weeks. It has about 80 to 90% of the requirements that we generally find in some specific industries addressed as part of the product. So when you look at in the back office and front office, we make sure that those processes are end-to-end. and they are streamlined the way we implement Duet. Great example is, let's say a Salesforce quote, Salesforce CPQ. A quote gets created. Well, without an integration, you have to recreate that as an order in an ERP. It causes errors, it causes problems in a lot of cases. And so what we do, we take the quote and generate an order on the ERP side. There's no manual intervention, and that goes back to the earlier process or conversation. A lot of challenges with manual labor we have started to basically address with the product. The reality is that Duet as a base product, we have different versions, but the base product has about 30 embedded business processes in it. And those are based on best practices or common practices. So that's why it's fairly easy. The time to market is low, it's easy to implement, and customers love it.
Duet 360 is built to integrate a Salesforce CRM with an ERP. About 7 years ago, Endowance began working with Infor ERP systems, which are in wide use around the world. However, Rob Heenekamp maintains that Duet is flexible enough to integrate with literally any ERP.
Duet is built on a platform, it's called Gerent, which is a well-known middleware layer in the world. And it gives us a lot of flexibility. So we took the platform and we built on top of it the Duet One Office 360 product. What it did is it gave us access to the Infor market. But the flexibility of the middleware layer gives us a lot of flexibility in general. So yes, one endpoint is Salesforce, that won't change. But the ERPs that we can connect to are pretty much any ERP. I mean, we talk about any ERP in the sense that we have ERPs that we connect to that are 50 years old. Technology is old, but we're still able to connect because of the Gerent middleware layer. So yes, we started in Infor, but we have customers with Dynamics, customers Epicor, NetSuite, IFS, and basically any ERP that we need to connect to, we can connect to, even with homegrown ERPs, as long as they're built on a technology that we can somehow connect to. So that's the story around why it started and how it started. But reality is our customer base right now is much more diverse than just Infor.
One of the factors that can drive up the cost of integrating an ERP with a front office system is the amount of custom coding that might be needed. The code has to be written, it has to be tested extensively, and then installed, all of which is time-consuming and costly. According to Rob Heenekamp, that's rarely an issue with Duet.
So the beauty of the solution is that it has about 80 to 90% of the specific process embedded. So if you think about installing Duet, implementing Duet as a concept, it has a managed package on the Salesforce side. It has a lot of features, and that took about a year to develop. Then we have the middleware layer where all the mapping and the business logic and error handling is done. That's all there. Nothing changes there. The only thing that changes when we implement Duet is how do we connect to the ERP and how is the data structured? How is the object model structured? That's the only component that to us is the factor that complicates the integration a little bit. But the reality is, if we run into an ERP that has more challenges, it still won't take too much of our time because that piece only is about 25% of the whole implementation. So what we find is that the majority of our product doesn't change. Then you have the connectivity on the ERP side. Now, what does happen is if customers have specific requirements, and everybody does, that would be 10 to 20%, let's say, configuration that needs to be added. But that's generally very limited. The way we sell the product is we actually install the product, implement the product in the customer environment, and we start going through testing. And whatever is missing in their process, it's going to be added as a true-up. So that's a smaller percentage of our customer base. Generally, most of them will say Duet out of box works for us.
One of Endowance's long-term customers is General Kinematics, a company that manufactures heavy equipment for industries like mining, forestry, metals recycling, and construction. Their equipment is sold around the world and is built on leading-edge technology. However, the same could not be said for their front and back office operations. General Kinematics was an Infor customer at the time they met Endowance. They were also a company with no CRM system. Jim Egan is General Kinematics Vice President of North American Sales.
Yeah, so it's an interesting backstory as well related to this. When we first got introduced to Endowance, they had not launched Duet 360. So the conversation began with them prior to that being a possibility. They were working with Ion as the Infor product at the time for connectivity. And for us, the costs and just the implementation was getting to be a bit overwhelming. It seemed much more suited for a larger company. But ultimately, the problem we were trying to solve was how do you get all the data, and there's just tons of it in your ERP system, everything from the invoicing and the order entry and the receivables, shipments, all the stuff that a sales organization would want. How do you get that to be visible in what would become our CRM with Salesforce? And we had not previously had a CRM here. And we're also making a transition to having our workforce be remote, to have our team selling in the cities and the communities that they would ultimately be working, as opposed to just being geographically located out of our headquarters. So we knew we needed a system that would display all of that key information that the ERP holds, but how to connect the two ultimately came down to the relationship with Endowance and their product. When they launched Duet 360, it seemed to be the right size, the right feature set, something that we could get our arms around. Our IT department is only a handful of people, unlike bigger companies that have entire office floors of IT staff. So for us, meeting Endowance was quite timely.
And of course, with Duet 360, you've got a product that gives your teams in the field mobility.
Chris, that's absolutely right. The data at their fingertips is key. We are third generation at General Kinematics, and our president desires to be able to run business from his mobile device. And so with that is kind of a umbrella for what he wants all the sales team to be able to do, is kind of a marching order or theme to what we wanted. But when people are out in the field, being connected to the office is important, and being able to provide the customer with updates that are accurate and not having to call back to the office, not having to call back to somebody who's then going to look into the ERP for that data. When they can have that information at their fingertips, it's providing a pretty key service. So for Endowance and the Duet 360 product to connect us and have all of that on the Salesforce app was pretty important to us, and was definitely one of the key things we were trying to achieve.
What were you using before CRM?
Very famously, it was Excel spreadsheets. And I think everybody knows the functionality and how much you can do. And we've taken that, I think, like a lot of businesses, and we had run wild with it. There was just massive Excel sheets, and there was an Excel sheet for everything. And but how do you get that updated and consistent was a problem. And it's not a CRM. It doesn't do the tracking and some of that metrics-based management that we felt was important. So we did literally go from Word documents and Excel files to our first true CRM with Salesforce.
Has the integration with your Infor ERP worked?
It absolutely has worked. The relationship has been tremendous. It's one that continues to this day, and we continue to rely on them. But when we first launched, and we didn't really know what Duet 360 was, other than their product information sheet, right? You don't really know how it will work in reality, and we've been quite pleased that everything that was promised was delivered.
Can you give me an example of how this ERP integration has worked?
Yeah, I can give you a couple examples. I think when you have a sales team that previously was used to updating their opportunities after the fact, and sometimes after the fact could be as much as a week later, you lose key points of information in terms of how that information is shared consistently amongst the team. Certainly they would perhaps keep that in a notebook, but it wasn't visible to others that have to be aware of those opportunities. So as we migrated to the CRM, we have been encouraging, and the team has adopted the ability to, in the moment, sometimes as soon as in the parking lot, update the opportunity or even just a regular customer visit right there from the mobile app. And then that is, of course, instantly visible to everybody on the team. Now, they may also wait till they're back at the hotel, but the point is that they became much more efficient and much more accurate in updating the information that the business needs to know in order to make accurate business decisions. We can also assist our accounting team if there's a question about invoicing. We have all of that through the mobile app, and because the Salesforce is connected through Duet 360, everything that is in our ERP sightline comes through. It's accurate. It's as though the customer is talking directly to the accounting and to the shipping department. And so I think that's a pretty nice value add for our customers to make sure that we give them exactly the information that they need in a timely manner.
Have there been any hard metrics that you can point to?
We sometimes try to take an approach where, okay, this is the direct financial benefit. And I think I could sum it up that it's probably in a conservative, we can improve the top line by about 10%.
Endowance has entered into a working arrangement with Gerent. The two companies will cooperate to market and implement Duet 360 together. Here's Rob Heenekamp again.
Gerent is a well-known Salesforce partner. We have a lot of sales expertise as well. And what happens in the relationship with Gerent is Gerent will actually do the Salesforce implementation and work together with our teams to actually make sure that it all is very streamlined for our customers using Duet, as well as the Gerent expertise to implement Salesforce solutions. It's not just on the implementation side, it's also on the sales side. So we are integrating our sales teams, meaning from a sales perspective. And we basically offer our customers a joint solution where Gerent plays a role as well as Endowance. And we had numerous customers so far, and we're getting much better at how it all works. And there's a lot of, there's a great future together, because what we offer is something that will improve the Gerent implementation cycle, sales cycles, and not just that, also implementation. It gives us the ability to put our product in the market. So to me, it's a win-win to have this relationship. It's going to be very strategic for all of us.
Tearing down silos, integrating data, having a 360-degree view of the customer. These are the buzzwords in manufacturing today, but they're also the strategies that continue to drive companies like General Kinematics and others to greater levels of efficiency. And that translates into greater levels of customer service. These levels of efficiency are attainable. Jim Egan has attested to that, demonstrating the success that his firm has achieved using Duet 360. You've been listening to Ahead of the Curve, produced by Gerent in cooperation with Salesforce. Our thanks to Rob Heenekamp from Endowance and Jim Egan at General Kinematics for making this episode possible. Technical production for this and all episodes of Ahead of the Curve is from Dave Grine and the Acme Podcasting Company in Toronto. I'm Chris Henry. Thanks once again for listening.